On the precipice of what could be World War III, both Georgia basketball teams have made the tournament, and G-Day is about to take place. So, if the world does not blow up, we're going to have a lot of great spring sports to look forward to for Georgia fans, and I am looking forward to chopping it up with my buddy Cheeto. You already know what it is. This is Dogs Off the Leash.
I do it for the dogs.
Keegan, it's funny that you mentioned that because Twitter is a wild place right now with all the chaos that is in the world. I did happen to come across something that was a little bit more laid back, and I didn't know what I was looking at when I saw it, but what started off looking like a Tennessee walk-off, Georgia versus Tennessee, I believe it was in Athens. 8-7, Georgia's in the lead. Tennessee batter just blasted towards the wall. Looks like it's going over, and then at the very last second, after the player's doing his bat flip or slamming it to the ground, gets absolutely robbed, and then the Georgia bench just comes onto the field, and they're celebrating, going crazy. Great way to win, terrible way to lose. Couldn't be more happy that it was against Tennessee.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of being extra cocky, like the whole pride come before the fall type of vibes right there. So. But yeah, that was definitely a thing of beauty. Georgia baseball looks legit. They're one of the handful of programs year to year that is like knocking on elite. We got a lot of things going for Georgia athletics right now. I should have even mentioned this in the intro, but I don't profess to be on top of every single sport. The women's track team just won an indoor track national championship, which is badass. So I guess they're kind of like tennis. They got their indoors, their outdoor.
Yeah, and I wanted to give a shout out to the women's indoor track team as well. Getting a natty in anything is never easy, especially in the SEC, where you have a lot of people who go on to either the Olympic or the next step of athleticism in that field. So shout out to them. And the basketball team, we talked about what was going to make Georgia basketball more relevant was starting to make the big dance, right? March Madness is a huge step. We'll see how far they go, but they go in as an 8 seed, right? It's not like they were right on the bubble, like barely made it. Like, this was a pretty good team, and I think their 22 wins on the season was a record for the program. So Mike White has this team trending in the right direction. And then also quick shout out to the UGA gymnastics team, which has been good all year, but I believe they just came away with a slim victory over Alabama, I want to say it was. And for those who keep up with football, Mike Tomlin's daughter, I believe, is on the gymnastics team.
Yeah.
So he's been in Athens a little bit more. Not that that's a football story, but it's football adjacent. So shout out to all these other UGA teams putting on right now and all the little stories that may be tucked away with those. Just gotta love what UGA is doing as an entire university, entire program at the moment.
It's just honestly crazy. Like I made a post about how Josh Brooks has really kicked ass putting this all together, but I think it is a little bit of 3 steps forward, 1 step back. I don't know of anyone who's just had home run hires for every single sport, because it does require a little bit of knowledge. And even then, it's like there's luck involved. Each conference is probably different per the sport. So it's a lot of complex managing to put it all together. It's probably an understatement, but just from the outside looking in, hanging out on the recliner as a Georgia fan, it's cool to hear all these teams just kicking ass all over the board. So the main two I keep up with would probably be football and basketball. I played tennis, so it's cool watching them every now and then. And then golf is kind of the new sport I've been more interested in. And it's cool seeing all the golfers do well on the PGA Tour and whatnot. So
as far as basketball goes, too, from what I understand, the tournament's getting ready to start off, right? So the Dogs will be facing St. Louis, and I believe that game will start on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're the Billikens, St. Louis Billikens.
Something like that, yeah.
It's something like that. Anyways, maybe deep dive on that later. But everybody came here to talk spring football because it's that time again. This UGA team has already turned the page, ready for a new chapter, and what's going to be a new season upcoming quick, right? So the story last year was UGA was really young in a lot of places, had a new quarterback coming in, lost X amount of players to the draft, the same as we did this year, the same as we do most years. But now there is a sense that this team is going to be more dangerous, not just because if you take a look at the schedule, this is a very manageable schedule, but we have a lot of returning pieces in the places where UGA really emphasizes how it wins games, in the trenches, quarterback position, on the defense. So Keegan, going into this spring practice, what is the vibe around Georgia football right now? What have you kind of been keeping your eye on as far as storylines, and what has the most of your attention?
On paper, this is supposed to be the part of the year where there's really not as much news. This is kind of the dead period, but between all the NFL news, which we can get into with Georgia players, but as far as the actual football team with current players, you're not hearing as much. And part of that is because their heads are down, they're working out, they're conditioning. I remember back in high school, we had like mat drills, then you got your spring conditioning, then eventually you lock into spring football. And of course, as soon as it starts, and I guess it technically starts the day this will come out, or tomorrow as we're recording it now, if anything, we're kind of on the precipice of finding out a ton more about what this team has to offer, but we can just start from the top on a quick recap of what this offseason has kind of entailed.
Yeah, so let's park it on the coaches for just a minute, because that's kind of one of the things that I emphasized on as far as what I'm looking at for the team, right? So when we have a season where we don't win a championship, or we don't really get as far as I think most Georgia fans thought this team was capable of getting, beating Ole Miss in the regular season, losing to them in our first game of the playoffs, which was the second round because we had the bye, you're looking at changes. Now, 34 points to Ole Miss's 39 points is not a bad offense, but I think most of us can agree that while Zachariah Branch was amazing, we didn't stretch the field vertically enough, I think, to be as explosive as we wanted to be as an offense. Efficient, yes. You can't. Whereas some people may wanted to see change in the play calling position, we didn't get it this year. Bobo indeed got a raise, which we'll see how that turns out. But we did get a new offensive line coach in Phil Rosher, and then we definitely had a much needed change at the outside linebacker position. Our past linebacker coach left for the Dallas Cowboys, and the Dogs signed Larry Knight. Larry Knight has been a hot name in coaching. He was just hired on at West Virginia after a stint at Arkansas State, to where he led their defense as a top 9 unit in sacks. So with the returning players, which we'll talk about on the defense, I think this defense has a chance to be top 5 in the country if they can have a plus 10 jump just in the sacks department. We finished 2025 with 20 sacks. If we can get up to 30 plus, 35 sacks, nowhere near Miami, who was the leader last year. But if we can be middling in the sacks area, I think this defense, from the defensive line to the linebacker unit to the secondary, is so talented and experienced now that if our sack numbers jump, this is really going to be a scary, scary defense, to say the least. Keegan, what are your thoughts on Larry Knight, what he can do, and the type of talent he's going to have in this UGA defensive room?
As far as the front seven, we're going to have probably the most athletic on paper front seven we've had since the 21-22 teams. The amount of speed we have, the twitchiness, like there's a lot to like as far as Larry Knight just coming in, gelling with the rest of the defensive staff, and hopefully adding an elite pass rush, or at least a threat to throw offenses off.
Well, being that it's UGA, it's really tough for freshmen to come in and contribute right away. This is a really talented team. And I'm not really looking at any players in particular, but I did notice a theme as far as the new makeup of this team, right? So UGA actually led the SEC with 14 returning starters, right? And that's not even to mention all of our super talented people that contributed at one level or another, right? So we lead the SEC in that. We also led the SEC, or had the least transfers out, right? So we're talking about an 11-1 SEC championship team that's bringing back the most people and lost the least talent. That is a recipe for success, no matter how you slice it. And again, it's not about the individual bodies, even though there are plenty of those that we can get excited about, and the names will start flying during spring, as happens every year. 2 units that I'm really going to be looking at. You talked about Phil Rosher in the offensive line, being one of the new assistant coaches. I think most people thought maybe Monroe Freeling might come back, but you've even said it yourself, Keegan. Like, now he may have good numbers at the NFL Combine, and he'll get drafted because of the measurables, but he wasn't the best offensive lineman, at least during his time here. But you have Green coming back, Bobo once he gets back from injury, Dontrell Glover, and then on Gaston. Now, whether he decides to play him at right tackle or left tackles remaining to be seen. So really what it looks like off the rip right now is that left guard position open for grabs. So that sounds like a pretty strong offensive line, if you ask me. And then the wide receiver position, I think, is the biggest. You mentioned Isaiah Canyon coming in. He seems like a serviceable wide receiver, good size, good speed. I don't know what his impact's going to be, but the truth is the wide receiver room is taking a hit this year. Losing a player of Zachariah Branch's caliber. I know Noah Thomas didn't get the chance to show it, but I think he's an NFL wide receiver. I truly do. Colby Young, Dylan Bell, some of these guys that made plays for us, plays after plays during their career here, right? We do get London Humphreys back, but he's not the biggest deep threat, even though we saw him do damage during the Tennessee game. And then I'm really excited about both Taylon Taylor and CJ Wiley. I just don't know if 2026 is going to be the year that they break out of their roles. I think these guys are going to be elite wide receivers. Will that be next year? Not 100% sure. So, Sokovia White-Helton filling in at the slot position. It's not that these guys aren't talented. It's just if we don't have the right play call to really cater to these guys' skill set, I worry if we can be as explosive as we possibly can be. And with a play caller like Mike Bobo, that is definitely something that needs to be paid attention to, in my opinion. And then when you talk about the tight end room, it's kind of the opposite, right? This tight end room may be the most talented room that we've had at tight end in a long time. And that's saying a lot. Not production so far, but when you talk about the Lawson Luckies, the Elias Williams, Ethan Barbour coming back from injury, you've already got Prothro, which is probably the most exciting freshman name that's been talked about. And then people forget about Jaden Riddell. Jaden Riddell could start anywhere else in the country if he wanted to, and he's buried in the depth chart. So we have weapons, but I'm eager to see what the scheme and what the playbook is going to ask of these weapons before I get too excited about any one of them in particular. That's me personally.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a little bit frustrating because like we do have so much talent on. It's a little bit frustrating because it's a little bit frustrating because of the amount of talent in the tight end room to where it's like, how can we not lose somebody to the portal after spring football? Like, I don't know if there's.
I don't believe there is a spring portal anymore. I think this is the roster.
Okay.
Well, shit. They got rid of it. And that's fine because college football has been changing, right. And I think other teams are actually deciding to have spring games now because it's no longer just a showcase to the rest of the country. Like, hey, my players are good. Come on and get them. You know what I mean? I think that's done away with now. They only have the last portal was it. That's done. This is our roster.
Yeah, I think maybe the saving grace. So you mentioned like you hope that we can at least be as explosive as we need to in offense. But the four guys you've mentioned, London Humphrey, Taylon Taylor, CJ Wiley, Sokovia White, all of those guys take the top off the defense speed, in my opinion. Do they not? I mean, are those guys not faster?
Okay.
I'm not saying better receivers overall.
I'm talking about deep ball threats. Okay, all of these guys have speed, but we use them in our offense as route runners, right? Slot guys, underneath concepts. London Humphreys had that great catch against Tennessee, right? I noted that, to be fair. I believe it was Taylon Taylor. He had an opportunity to make that big play against Alabama, drop the ball right through his hands, right? Rough start to his freshman campaign as a wide receiver. He will get better, but none of these guys on this roster has shown themselves to be a bona fide take the top off a defense type of wide receiver. And we don't have an offensive coordinator that does that very often. So that's what I'm kind of seeing.
Okay, so the biggest thing you said to me was that we don't have an offensive coordinator who leans into that. But I don't think that means that these guys with, in my opinion, a little bit more top end speed than the dudes of last year outside of Zachariah Branch, right? Like, I don't know. No Thomas is fast. We didn't use him properly, so your point's making more sense. But Colby Young wasn't necessarily known to be a burner. Fast for his size, but not necessarily as fast as these four that we're talking about.
Sure.
I don't know. Like, I think if Mike Bobo looks at the four dudes that, like, I'm looking at them, be like, bro, we got to throw it down the field. Like, if anything, we got more decoys to do what you're saying with the underneath routes, which the decoy to Z Branch and then throwing it deep to Colby, or have Z Branch go deep, and now all of a sudden we're throwing a screen to Colby. Like either or. Like I think in that regard, we have more guys with the quick wiggle potential, like extra runner types with the speed.
Yeah,
that's where I think Isaiah Canyon can come in and add the security blanket, if you will. Supposing he gets healthy, he was tearing us up. Like Georgia Tech was using him effectively against Georgia's defense. So this is a bigger body dude who can route. He can do a little bit of all of those things. He's like Noah Thomas meets Colby Young a little bit.
And I don't disagree with you, and I could turn out to be wrong. But as it stands today,
well,
I don't have any tape. I can't have any confidence in these guys we haven't seen do it on a consistent basis yet.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's fair to say you're wrong by any means. I just think what you're saying is absolutely right from the slice of the pie you're cutting it from there. I think that makes sense. But I'm arguing that, hey, even with what you're saying that I agree with, some of these dudes are pretty fast.
They're fast, no doubt. They're fast, no doubt.
So there's something there. And I think maybe a silver lining with the talented tight end room and the question marks a little bit on offense, especially when we're losing more of those bigger body guys who you can kind of depend on. Caden Prothro can step in and be the Noah Thomas, right? He can really play that position and potentially do a little bit of what Noah Thomas and Colby Young were doing last year for Georgia. So that's a cool thing.
He could be a great weapon down the seam. He could do all that. But that goes back to the play caller, right? Because what I think is gonna end up happening somewhere along the course of the season, and I think we have a pretty manageable season. We're gonna be just better than most of the teams that we play. Yeah. But it's gonna be how our defense is gonna attack us, right? If you're scheming against the Mike Bobo offense and Gunnar Stockton, who's great with one-on-one throws, what are you going to do? I'm going to play a lot of zone, and I'm going to attack a lot of the underneath routes. I'm going to force Georgia to throw the ball over my head. They're going to have to show me that they can do that, right? So when the critical moments come in 2026, how will we adjust? Will we do the same thing that we've always done and rely on screens and, all this underneath type stuff, or will we finally start to use some of the weapons that you're saying that we have the speed and the talent to do, which I agree, but if we don't use it, it's a moot point.
For sure. And I think
we'll make all of this move smoother, and it's not like necessarily a groundbreaking point to make, but if the offensive line is as athletic as they look, with one Gaston stepping in, maybe having the 6'9" basketball player dude popping in there, like there's some room for the rotation,
some iron sharpening iron within that offensive line room to really like make the rest of the offense come together, get the creases we need, get the pushes we need. So really the offensive line could make all of this a lot easier on everybody. But you're right. Like if I'm looking at Georgia's offense, I want them to play within a shell, be conservative, like go for this dink and dunk, and eventually you're going to have these 3 and outs because it's just not going to go your way when you're playing in that tight of space and you're only playing 8 yards deep the whole time. Like we'll just bring the box down, like make your receivers try to catch it in traffic constantly.
Yeah, it's just the reality. And as right now it's spring, so it's really early, so a lot of these conversations will be forgotten. But when inevitably we're going to have to contend with the likes of Texas, who I think is a really good chance to push for the SEC championship this year. What does Lane Kiffin do down at LSU this year? Can Alabama bounce back? Does Ole Miss get their quarterback to play for his 100th year in a row? So all of these things are going to matter. But the one thing that you can stop with Georgia, Keegan, and I'll let you have it because I got to run here in a second, is can they be explosive when they need to be, right? Will they put the trust in their players to stretch the field? Because that's what this game is. We do everything else so well, but we've got to be able to at least be a threat vertically. And I think every other door opens up to whatever it is that we want to do as a team, as fans, but mostly what Kirby wants to do. Because, I think that can help be a part of the recipe to win. I think it can. I don't see why it can't be.
Lots of good things in the Georgia world of sports, all things Georgia football. It will be great chopping it up, getting deeper in on these spring practice notes and all the little rumblings. But for now, I'm Keegan, my co-host is Cheeto, and this has been another episode of Dogs Off the Leash.
Do it for the dogs. Do it for the dogs. I do it for the dogs.